Hey, it's George. I just want to say thank you for listening to this Trainer Spotlight episode. Let's not waste any time and get right into it. Coach, what's going on? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so as far as education goes, I'm going to forget. Like I've done a bunch of certifications, as I'm sure many of your guests have, but I've been coaching and personal training, nutrition coaching since 2015 for mostly moms over 40. I started at a place called Get in Shape for Women that was basically like curves, and I absolutely loved it. And then I transitioned to a gym that specifically catered to the 40 plus population. So I got to work with a bunch of people, men, women, and everything in between for what was it, 7 years. And in that time I got certs like PPSC, pain free performance, uh, what else, precision nutrition level 1, uh, those are the big ones. Oh, CSCS, so certified strength and conditioning coach, specialist. And then recently I got a menopause coaching certification with Girls Gone Strong, which is probably like the big one that I talk about because that's pretty much my clientele, is like that area of life. So I love riffing on stuff like that and talking about solutions and best practice and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much that as far as like education goes. And then as far as business, I catered my business when I went out on my own. I'm like, I'm going to serve the people that I'm used to serving, that I'm best at serving. That is the moms 40 plus population. And my whole company is based on making it simple because they have been completely screwed over the past 20, 30, 40 years by marketing and a bunch of BS. So my goal is to simplify everything, make it realistic, and let them hit and allow them to hit their goals in a way that doesn't feel like it's some gigantic grind, which unfortunately is like the norm right now.
It's great getting to know you as a coach, but you're not a coach 24/7. So, can you tell me a funny or interesting story about yourself that happened either in your practice as a coach or in your normal life outside of coaching?
The only thing that really came to mind story wise was when my fiance and I were in San Francisco, and she was there for a medical conference presenting on something. And like, we're just having a great time. I'm killing time during the day while she's crushing it in the conference and everything. And then eventually we get some time to ourselves where we could just hang out. And she was there with a couple of her co-residents too. So we're like, all right, let's just hit brunch. Let's find somewhere random. So we roll up, and they're like, oh, are you guys here for the show? And we're like, what show? And they're like, oh, the drag show. And my girlfriend at the time, now fiance, her eyes lit up and she was like, oh my God. Like, she's a big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race and all that. She's like, that would be awesome. But she looks at me and she's like, if you're not comfortable, that's totally cool. And without skipping a beat, I'm like, nah, I'm here for a good time. Let's do it. So, long story short, have a blast. And honestly, I ended up being like the drag queen's favorite person because I guess they love the straight guys. But regardless, I'm like, I got an ego boost of the century. Like, I feel amazing. And it kind of just gets into the whole thing of like, the resounding thing is I'm game for anything. Like, I'm here for a good time. And if whatever package that comes in, I'm all about it. And that's kind of how I serve clients. I'm like, hey, we're all here for a joint purpose. Like, I don't care who you are, where you come from, what you do, like, we are going to achieve the goal. So whether that's fat loss, whether that's building muscle, whether that's having a fun time at a drag show, I don't care. I'm game and I'm ready to go.
What strategies do you use to attract and retain clients in your personal training business? I think we can all learn from each other here, and we'll probably find some answers to be quite similar to one another. But I'm really interested to hear what strategies and things you use to get new clients and keep the ones you currently have.
When it comes to attracting clients, my big two sources are my podcast and my Facebook group, because I just give them as much free information as possible, because it's just my personal philosophy that we should not be gatekeeping information. The real value in a coach is the accountability and the support, and the education should be like secondary. Like, it's like, yes, it's a guarantee, but it's not like what we're hired for. It's not like, oh, buy my secret thing, because we're all teaching the same shit. So, and when it comes to actually getting people in, basically I just stay present. So I'm always in the Facebook group, putting out consistent podcasts and saying, hey, I'm here when you need me. And then on top of that, I run little boot camps throughout the year, like once or twice, that are big client drivers. And then also just getting into the messaging and like asking them what their problems are. And then eventually just bringing them to a call where it's like, okay, there's a lot going on here. Why don't we just hop on a quick call? No obligation whatsoever. Just, I want to help. And then a good amount of times people will be like, oh, so like, what is your coaching like? What does that entail? And then I go through that with them and they're like, oh, this kind of matches my price point. So let's do this thing. So it's not an intentional thing. It's just coming from a place of serving. And then when it gets to that point and they're on board and they're doing the thing, the way I keep them on board and my client retention being over a year is basically, one, being super supportive and actually getting back to them as quickly as I possibly can. I tell them 24 hours, but tell them if they catch me at the right time, I'll respond in minutes. And on top of that, just always having periodic meetings like I do every 12 weeks where we touch up the plan, see what the next goals are. And we always have that next goal, that next thing that we're working on. So they come to expect it. And then eventually it just becomes a part of their life for a good chunk of them. And then for the people that can't financially do it, we bring them down to something like a little bit lower tier, or they just go off on their own, which is fine. But a lot of them stick around for years.
Let's say you get a new client. What's your process for assessing their fitness level, addressing their goals, and other things they express as being important? We all have different methods and can learn a lot from each other. Let's open the door and share some of our secrets.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a big limitation being that I'm mostly online. But when I do work with clients over Zoom doing personal training, the big thing is I just put them through a very standard program where it's like, okay, we're going to do a very light goblet squat. We're going to see if we could do a push-up or not in some variation. We're going to do some sort of a hinging movement. And basically before doing any of that, asking, do they have any pain? Do they have any pre-existing injuries? Because that's usually a good tell of what we can and cannot do, or how to regress. So like if somebody has back pain, I won't do an RDL immediately. I'll do like a butt tap to the wall, something super duper regressed where it's like, this is basically the movement, but it's not like these random screenings that, I mean, like we know FMS and all this other stuff, like it is helpful, but it doesn't exactly give us a whole lot as far as like practical stuff. So I'm just like, why don't we just do the movements and tell me if it hurts? And I've been doing this for almost 10 years. And that's been a really good way of going about it. And I have had so few people get hurt. And honestly, it's never been during a training session. It's always been outside. So when it comes to actually training people, it's really just ask them, how does this feel? Does that hurt? Take it slow and then build up rather than starting them at some super advanced progression and really honing in on the regressions instead. And then when it comes to addressing their goals, it really just depends on what they are. So most of the people that come to me want to get toned. So that requires us to build some muscle, burn some body fat. So we make sure that we get into a calorie deficit in one way or another, whether that's counting calories, doing other methods. And then when it comes to building lean muscle, since most of them are newbies and can pull it off at the same time, we do basic strength training, progressive overload, and making sure that we stay pain-free the whole time and injury-free ideally. And we also address things that affect recovery, things like sleep, stress, and other nutritional aspects that might get in their way, or hydration. So we cover all the bases to make sure that their body responds the best.
I'm a huge fan of continuing education, and I'm building FITLETE to give trainers more efficient access to education that solves their clients' problems. We all look at problem solving differently, and taking different courses, obtaining certifications, and going to new conferences can help us learn from one another. How do you continually develop your skill set as a trainer?
Yeah, sorry, I must have jumped the gun on this one. But when it comes to the certifications, my big four are PPSC, pain-free performance, Girls Gone Strong, certified menopause coach, PN1, so precision nutrition level 1, and also, CSCS, so Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, are the big four, but I've got a couple others, but those are the big ones. And then when it comes to staying up to date, I'm a member of a couple of research reviews like REPS, which is Lane Norton's, Alan Aragon's, and also just follow industry experts online, because even though social media is not the same thing as a textbook or anything, it can guide the learning in the right direction as far as like things that people are asking these major influencers that actually have knowledge on the subject. So when it comes to quick hits and snippets of like what I want to dive a little bit more into, that's a really good way to go about it, and one that I think saves a whole lot of time too and helps with the direction of things.
The fitness industry is rapidly evolving before our eyes. How do you envision your personal training business evolving with it in the next few years? I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this because we have to plan for the future and a future we want for our business. And while all of our businesses might have the same basic goal of helping people with their fitness, we can structure them in very different ways from one another.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in expanding the online offerings or just improving them in general, because I think going into the future with people's crazy schedules, it's going to be harder to really block out time to go to the gym, to do an hour with a personal trainer, which is why I kind of shifted the way I did. And on top of that, a lot of companies like Optavia or Weight Watchers and all this stuff, they promote that they have coaches, but we all know that they're just marketers. They're not actually coaches. They're just pushing a system. So when people actually seek out good coaching, then that's going to be where the tide shifts. And that's where I think a lot of people are going to start seeing the long-term success that they want, especially off the backs of these like GLP medications and things like that. When people understand that the secret sauce is in working with somebody that can help you with 24 hours out of the day rather than just the one, then I really feel like that's where people are going to start gravitating towards, because that's going to get them the best results.
I know challenges are all over the place in the fitness industry and personal training. Information is available in different formats. Clients are more easily misled by gurus and charlatans. Social media's influence is becoming more and more ingrained in people's lives. And now we have AI. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges currently facing the fitness and personal training industry?
Honestly, I think the biggest one is misguided energy, because a lot of people are focusing on the wrong things. Like, what does the algorithm say? Like, how do I get in front of more people? When it's like, when you serve the people in front of you and you start these conversations and build these relationships, it compounds over time. But a lot of people are just trying to make the best Instagram or the best whatever on TikTok. And it's like everybody's chasing the wrong shit. And on top of that, putting other coaches down or even other systems, like I threw shade at Optavia and Weight Watchers, but they're not even the enemy, because at the end of the day, more than 50% of people are overweight, or not even, more than 50% of people are going to be obese right now. And even more people are going to be overweight in the years to come. And that's where the money is. That's where our people are. That's where we got to be focusing on. So we're not really fighting against the algorithm or all this other bullshit that we hyper fixate on. We're fighting against Netflix, against people not wanting to do the thing, against boredom, against like all these things that stop people from being active and eating better.
Bryan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some great info about yourself. I met Bryan, I believe it was the first night social at the Real Coaches Summit. We met after the social event happened. So a group of us went to the lobby bar because we had some free drink tickets and some BOGO drink tickets, I think it was. And we were just all hanging out together, hanging around, having some drinks and laughing, telling stories, introducing ourselves, kind of doing the whole lighthearted networking, I guess, if you will. But when I try to meet new people, I try to make a contact in my phone with the person's name, even if I don't get a number or an email, just with maybe a detail about them that I can remember for the future. And one of the notes that I have in for Bryan, which I thought was funny, was that he and his wife really enjoy watching the Real Housewife shows. I don't remember how we got onto that topic during the group, but we we all took a little chuckle on it, and it was a fun little part of the night that I think was a good introduction for me into Bryan, and learning a little bit more about him through his socials and communicating with him since that event. I'm glad you guys got to know Bryan. Also, if you want to get to know him a little bit more after this episode, feel free to reach out with any of the ways that I have listed in the show notes. That's all for this episode. If you have any other questions about FITLETE, please learn more at fitlete.com. That is FITLETE.com, and I'll talk to you soon.